This is your Thursday daily delivery. Happy June 9th to everybody who celebrates. Hope you have a nice day out there today. It looks beautiful. Looks like it should be a great day to be in Minnesota. It's been a great June, a nice last few weeks, so get out there and enjoy the nice weather. Twins beat the Yankees. We'll get to that in a little bit. That's a breaking news story to some of us because they've not had success, to say the least, against New York in the last 20 years or so, as we talked a lot about on Wednesday's show. So we'll dissect that 8-1 victory and some of the key components of that here in a little bit. Jerry Zgoda covers golf for the Star Tribune will also join me here in a little while to talk about the new Saudi-backed tour, which starts today in London. A lot of golfers making the trip, making the kind of switching alliances, going away from the PGA Tour. Bryson DeChambeau and Patrick Reed, two of the latest. Although I don't think they're playing in this event; they're playing in a later event, but. The ripple effect of that on the PGA Tour, the ripple effect of that on the 3M Open, specifically the tour event here coming up later this summer. So Jerry and I will get into a lot of that as well as some of the human rights discussion around this tour and a lot of the objections that are correctly being raised by people as to how this is all playing out. Couple of other baseball stories of note to get to, including one involving Willians Astudillo. The Tortuga is back and better than ever. And Cooper Kupp, big extension with the Rams. What that means for the Rams and what that means for maybe Justin Jefferson, who will be extension seeking after this season, which will be sooner than you think. But first, what did I miss? Like I said, we're going to talk Twins at the beginning here. And, 1 out of 162 is kind of how we talk about baseball sometimes, just because there's so many games. It's hard for one game to stand out above others. But, the Twins, like we had talked about going into Thursday's game, were 38-110 against the Yankees since 2002, including 2-16 in the playoffs. So when you factor that in, when you factor in that the Yankees came into this game 40-15, that they had beaten the Twins 10-4 in the first game of the series on Tuesday, and the fact that they were putting, one of their best pitchers out there in they have a whole bunch of very good pitchers right now, but they were putting one of those best pitchers out there in Nestor Cortes. Twins got to him pretty good in this game. They win 8-1. I saw an amazing stat. This was the Yankees' 56th game because they are now 40-16. The Yankees this season had not trailed in any game by more than 6 runs, and the Twins put them in that spot in the 7th inning when they took that 8-1 lead. So, just pretty impressive performance all around for the Twins. Chris Archer, who's pitched pretty well this year, albeit in kind of a limited 4 or 5 inning role a lot of the time, ERA 3.65. He went 5 innings, only had 70 pitches, but 5 innings, 2 hits, 1 run. Did have 4 walks, but got 2 strikeouts. Twins helped this game by 4 double plays. And then Griffin Jacks, Emilio Pagan, and Caleb Thielbar get the rest done with 4 shutout innings in relief. But yeah, Cortez only went 4 1/3, 7 hits, 4 runs, all of them earned, and then the Twins got to the bullpen a little bit too. The big hitting stars in this game, Ryan Jeffers and Byron Buxton, both with long home runs, and Jose Miranda, who got off to a horrendous start after being called up from AAA St. Paul, has been very good lately. He's got the average up to 223, which doesn't sound great, but from where it was, that is good. Had 3 hits, 3 runs batted in this game. And so, just a good all-around game for the Twins, which we don't see very often against the Yankees. Like I said, this has been a struggle for them for as long as most of us can remember. So now they're sitting at 3-2 against, in this 9-game stretch that we kept talking about against Toronto, the Yankees, Tampa Bay, trying to win another series in the finale today. It's a tall task, again, with the projected pitching matchups. You've got Dylan Bundy against Garrett Cole. I will not say that's a good matchup for the Twins, but you know what? You never know, because you would have looked at this game with Chris Archer going against Nestor Cortez, and you would have said, I don't think that's going to happen for the Twins in this game, and they went 8-1. So, baseball can be funny like that sometimes, but Bundy's been really bad lately. ERA of almost 9 in his last 6 starts, while Cole has been very good all year, 5-1, 2.78 ERA. But even if they lost this game, 640 start in this one, the Twins have to feel okay about what's going on so far against this stretch of good teams, right? I mean, we didn't expect much from them, and maybe we need to raise our expectations. Maybe this is a sign that we need to lift up our expectations for them, because they've continued to prove us wrong most of the year. They certainly did not compete against Houston or the Dodgers. Not many teams have. They got one from the Yankees. If they can win this game Thursday night, I think that changes the complexion of the season. Doesn't guarantee anything going forward. Doesn't guarantee anything when you get to the postseason if they are going to get there. But that will change some impressions about this team if they can win tonight. Even if they lose, they're in fine shape in this 9-game stretch, but they could change some impressions if they could get this win. But 8-1 on Wednesday, that was a very good win for them. Let's hear from Rocco Baldelli, Twins manager, after the game.
It was a good, decisive win for the group.
Yeah.
And Arch went out there and did a great job, giving us 5 really, really thorough innings out there, and a lot of big swings everywhere you looked. And they're tough to score runs against, and to be able to go out there and score runs like that against them today was a great sign, and just a good night.
So like I said, going for the series win tonight, we'll see if they can get it done, see if Dylan Bundy can stay in the rotation. It's been a struggle for him, and with with Joe Ryan making a rehab start in St. Paul pretty soon here, trying to come back. Looks like they could be getting a little bit healthier on the pitching front. Might be a time to think about a move there in the rotation. So big start tonight for Dylan Bundy, I would imagine, and a big opportunity for the Twins.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake for 24/7 gaming, fun restaurants and bars, and luxurious hotel rooms. And join Club M to bask in the rewards. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is play day.
Now, before we get to Jerry Zgoda, I want to clear out a couple more baseball-related things. And I should mention, too, we will talk NBA Finals a little bit later on in the show as well. I don't know if I teased that at the beginning of the show, but certainly we'll talk about Boston's Game 3 win that gives them a 2-1 series edge. But the two baseball things. One, Willians Astudillo, La Tortuga. I don't know if you knew this, but he is back with the Miami Marlins and in full effect. Had a major clutch moment for the Marlins. 10th inning, comes into the game as a pinch hitter. Marlins are down 1-0 after Washington had scored 1 run in the top of the 10th. Comes in, gets the game tying hit. Single, knocks in a run. He gets to second base on the throw, and then next batter up, single to right center. He comes flying around the bases as only Willians Astudillo can, comes barreling into the plate, kind of does a half slide, half face plant, scores the winning run. The crowd goes wild. Makes you miss him a little bit, maybe a lot. He was never a great player, but he was always an entertaining, fun player when he was with the Twins. So good for him. Good for him getting to the majors with another team. Good for him having a positive impact in a game and continuing to do La Tortuga things. The other thing, the Angels fired manager Joe Madden the other day, promoted Phil Nevin, former Twin player in 2006, for a minute, and they're in the midst of this long losing streak. And in order to try to break the streak, they had every player come to the plate Thursday to a Nickelback song. People do a lot of weird things to try to break out of slumps. This certainly qualifies as one of the weirdest I have heard of, but it did not work. They lost for the 14th straight game, lost 1-0. So you got to list. Not only are you getting shut out in a game, losing your 14th straight game, Joe Madden's just been fired, but you have to listen to Nickelback every time you come to the plate. You might remember too, I started a little thing here called Tuesday Morning Nickelback during the NFL season last year. I could only sustain it for a few weeks because I just couldn't take the Nickelback. So I'm trying to imagine the angst of batters who would come to the plate, have to listen to those songs and just continue to not get hits and keep losing. So tough for the Angels in that regard, tough in a lot of different ways for them. And, this is how you remind me that they have 14 losses in a row. Glad to be joined on Daily Delivery today by Jerry Zgoda, covers golf for the Star Tribune. Interesting time for golf right now, Jerry, and you had an interesting story earlier this week, kind of about the Saudi-backed tour, this, whatever they're calling it, LIV, whether they're calling it 54, I know it's Roman numerals, whatever we're calling it, is having a major disrupting effect on golf. All sorts of human rights questions being correctly raised in conjunction with this Saudi-backed tour, but a lot of prominent players also going to play in this first event starting Thursday in London. And now we've got some commitments now too. We see Wednesday Bryson DeChambeau and Patrick Reed sounds like will be playing on future events. But you wrote about kind of the impact on the PGA Tour and particularly on the 3M Open, which of course for a long time was a Champions Tour event, but is now a regular tour event. And a lot of the players who normally would be playing on this tour, what probably will not be this year, or at least some rather big names. When you caught up with Hollis Cavender the other day, what was the kind of the big takeaway that you had from your conversation with him?
Well, he didn't seem too concerned about it, but he did acknowledge that it probably will impact or could impact their field this year. If you look at the top guys who have committed, Phil, Dustin Johnson, today DeChambeau, Reed, Oosthuizen, Schwartzel, Sergio, those guys have all played here before. That's not meaning that they were going to play here this year, but it's just, the pool gets smaller. It was already small because they're at the week after the British Open, which makes it challenging. And now you add guys who, now the question is, are they going to try to play on both tours? How's the PGA Tour going to respond? That's going to be all kinds of intrigue coming out here. The other day, Phil released a statement saying, he's going to play on this 54 tour or whatever we're calling it. But he also planned to do play the majors. So how's that going to work out? And is he going to be welcome? So, the coming days and weeks, so it'll be interesting to see what it looks like. It's going to be kind of high-tech broadcast, but it's not going to be on a major network. It'll be streamed starting tomorrow in London, and then how it plays out. First event here in the U.S. in Portland at the end of the month, just what it's going to look like and sound like.
Now, to back this up a little bit, this is a tour that's been talked about for a while now. It's backed by the Saudis. It is 3 days, not 4. There's no cuts, and there's kind of a team captain format. So it's much different than the PGA Tour. That said, I imagine the money is the big appeal to these guys. A lot of these guys getting major, guarantees to go play on this tour. What's your take on just the the decision these guys are having to make and kind of the process they're going through to come to these decisions, and whether it's eventually leaving the PGA Tour or trying to have it both ways, going to this upstart that certainly has some questions about it.
I hate the word legacy, but like in a case like Phil, how is this history going to look at these guys who, some people call it blood money that they're taking? Just how are they going to look at it? The careers they've had, if they tie themselves to this tour exclusively and they don't play again on the PGA Tour. Now, I'm not sure if that's ever going to happen, but that's the thing that's kind of at stake here. And it is different. It's 54 holes, like you said, 48 players, so it's a smaller field, much smaller. No cuts. Everybody gets their money. And I think this first event's $25 million, pays the winner $4 million. But as you mentioned, the difference also is that it's a team event as well, so it's going to have kind of a different format. You're going to have guys that you've heard of, and then you're going to have a bunch of guys you've never heard of. So even filling that 48-player field.
Are you surprised at the number of big names we're seeing in this at this point? Did you think it would get to? Phil had the comment, 3 or 4 months ago that kind of touched off a lot of this conversation, and he's kind of walked some of that back and apologized for that this week. But it kind of felt like at that point, a lot of golfers were going to kind of approach this with kind of a hands-off, kind of seeing what the rightful backlash to it was. Are you surprised, or what's your reaction to all the big names we are seeing? I mean, it's not all the biggest names in golf, but it's a lot of it. I think we're up to 9 former major champions who are going to play have committed to some sort of event in this tour. And that's, those are some pretty big names in golf. And in addition to the ones we've already mentioned.
But how many in the top 20 currently?
Yeah, sure.
Guys that haven't had, I asked House, is this going to be a seismic shift for the game? And he goes, unless their fields get a lot better, he said, he doesn't see it. He claimed that he wasn't too worried about it, but you don't have the top 10 guys. You don't have the Rorys and the Schefflers and even though some of those guys don't have big names yet, but the guys who are playing their best, guys you do are having is DeChambeau, who's trying to find his game, Patrick Reed, who hasn't won another major since the Masters, Oosthuizen, who's played pretty well, Schwartzel, who's been here the last couple of years and was trying to kind of come back, as plays well in the majors, and then you got Koepka, but it's Chase Koepka, not Brooks. So, and the interesting thing is, it looks like they're going for like a lot of these recent amateur champions. They're trying to get young guys and maybe build with them. And I don't know if the tour is going to be around that long for that strategy to pay off, but that's another interesting thing to look at.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, you're right. It is more of the guys who have won in the past, maybe some bigger names. I mean, Phil Mickelson certainly still, capable of winning, but he's eligible for the Champions Tour now, right? He's over 50. He's a 6-time major champion. Dustin Johnson, a 2-time winner, but guys like Sergio Garcia, Charles Schwartzel. I mean, some of these people have left the PGA Tour, have resigned from the tour, like Dustin Johnson, Sergio, Charles Schwartzel, Kevin Na, but I'm interested to see what, how the PGA eventually reacts to this. They've been trying to take a hardline stance by threatening punishment for people who do play on this tour. But I don't know, at a certain point where the leverage changes or whether the leverage never changes and they still feel like they've got, 95% of the best still playing on their tour.
I can't help but think when I look at this and all this stuff, then I tune in on my TV on the weekends. The USFL with the Birmingham Stallions, back 30, 40 years later after they tried to kind of make their own league. And we'll see with this. I mean, I just don't know. Are people going to tune in unless these fields get a lot better? Are people going to tune in to see Phil and DJ play?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. And, speaking of good questions, I want to play one from earlier this week. This was an AP reporter talking to, I believe, Graham McDowell. Just these players who are playing in this event in London have been getting, like I said, rightfully peppered with questions about, human rights, Saudi involvement in, past, atrocities, things like that. So I want to play that clip right now.
You are now effectively working as an extension of Saudi PR. You talked about how this series is a force for good, and the journey you've been told about Saudi Arabia is on. How is that journey helping the women oppressed in Saudi Arabia, the migrant groups, their rights violated, the LGBTQ individuals who were criminalized, the families of the 81 men who were executed in March, and those being bombed in Yemen.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had the ability to be able to have that conversation with you. I think as golfers, if we tried to cure, geopolitical situations in every country in the world that we play golf in, we wouldn't play a lot of golf. It's a really hard question to answer. We're just here to focus on the golf and kind of, what it does globally for the role models that these guys are and that we are. And that's a really hard question to get into.
And Jerry, when you see these players being put into, uncomfortable, but this is what they signed up for positions. Do you imagine this is more than they've bargained for, or do you think they kind of went into this eyes wide open, knowing that there was going to be a certain backlash to it? Kind of seeing what happened with Phil Mickelson.
Well, they should know that this thing's already is starting by taking a PR hit, and then you got to be careful with what you say, because there's the famous quote, I don't know when it was, but fairly recently, of the tour commissioner Greg Norman talking about Jamal Khashoggi and the Saudis saying we all make mistakes.
Right?
Can you talk about a more tone deaf comment than that? So I mean, they're already starting with that. So if they're not ready for the questions, they should be, because they're coming.
Couple more things for you, Jerry. Good stuff. Enjoying this conversation. And it's just a fascinating thing to me. I mean, I don't think we've seen something quite like this, with the swirl of, the money and the politics involved. And I like the USFL example is a good one, but there are, some differences here in terms of where the money is coming from. Ultimately, do you think this doesn't, that they kind of make a splash early, but it's hard to sustain, because where, even if you're printing money, you can only convince so many people to come play on this tour, or do you think this finds a way to sustain itself beyond just kind of this initial burst of curiosity?
Well, the interesting thing is these guys on the PGA Tour are all self-contractors. They're all out for themselves. They only get paid according to how they win and how they perform. Now the winners will get more here on this tour, but a lot of this, if the top guys sign these big deals, I mean, it's basically an appearance fee. It's not so much dependent on them playing for their livelihoods, and I think that's a difference. I mean, I think the one thing that makes the PGA Tour compelling.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be compelling too to watch what happens, especially when this first event, not just the London one, but the one in a few weeks in Portland, Oregon. When it comes to the U.S., and there's probably even some more attention put on it. And there's a few U.S. events, if I'm not mistaken. I think there's one in Boston. I think there's one in
5 of 8 of them. So
right, Chicago, Miami. So there's a whole bunch of them kind of in this area. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays out. But like I said, I can't recall a story with such intrigue to me, at least from a number of different standpoints. So I don't know. I guess I'll watch it and see what, at a certain point, it's kind of hard to discern sometimes the quality of golf, just because it kind of looks the same to me. Sometimes I don't have that level of expertise. Like when I watch a basketball game, I can tell the difference between the elite and the not so elite. In golf, it's maybe harder for me to tell, but I do wonder, you're right, without a TV deal in place, with just a streaming deal, what the actual audience for this will be.
And don't forget that 2 of the 8 courses are also at Trump resorts.
Oh man. Well, there's a lot to unpack with these 8 events. We'll see how it all plays out, but it's been fascinating to watch so far. Jerry, appreciate it. And we'll see how this impacts the 3M as we get closer to that as well.
Mike, good talking to you.
Interesting conversation with Jerry Zgoda. A lot of good points. He covers golf very well. Should be some good golf coverage from him coming up as the summer goes along. I'll be watching to see, what the coverage of this tour is like as things go on. Are we going to focus on the golf, or are they going to keep pushing on the human rights angle, which I think they should, reporters should. But we will see. We'll see. These things tend to fade a little bit once the competition starts, so that will be a curious thing for me to watch going forward. Let's shift gears a little bit right now for a couple things at the end. First, NBA Finals. Celtics win. Beat Golden State rather handily, turned the tide in the fourth quarter again. A big fourth quarter for Boston. They outscore Golden State in the fourth quarter of that game 23-11. So it was defense that told the story, particularly in that fourth quarter when Golden State, came in trailing by just 4 points after a big third quarter. Tough thing for Golden State late in that fourth quarter, late in that game. Steph Curry got his ankle sat on basically during a scrum on the floor by Al Horford. Al Horford, a pretty big player. I would guess that Curry is going to be good enough to play. Try not to put weight on it after the game, but obviously any injury to Curry is a blow, a major blow to anything the Golden State is going to try to do. They're already down 2-1 in this series. I think Boston has proved to be the better team so far. Not really a surprise. I think they were, all the kind of analytics predictors had them basically at 80% to win this series going in. Golden State's obviously got a lot of those key pieces from those championship teams still on the roster, most notably Draymond Green, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson. I just don't know if they're a great team. I think they're a good team that took advantage of a weak Western Conference this year to get to these finals. Boston getting all sorts of great performances from their big players. Jaylen Brown, 27 points. Marcus Smart just filling up the box score, 24 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists. Jason Tatum, 26, 9 assists, 6 rebounds. Boston's just a good, deep team. They are hard to deal with. And maybe they're getting an extra edge. This was a storyline from Draymond Green continuing to do a podcast through these NBA Finals. The Warriors forward has been doing a podcast all year. He got asked about it after the game. Let's play that exchange right now.
I found listening to your podcast recaps the last couple of games pretty interesting. Are you conscious at all of what you're saying about the X's and O's, the game plans, the adjustments could be making their way back to Boston staffers and influencing their decision-making at all?
No. I don't say much different on the podcast than I say to you right here. So, nah. What's the X's and O's that I said on the podcast? You all right?
Yeah, actually, the only real thing I noticed that really stood out was you talked about how to cover White, Smart, and Horford differently between games 1 and 2. That was really only...
Oh, yeah, that was just contesting shots. If that's X's and O's, then you reaching for something. It's all good, though. Keep going.
You wouldn't expect Draymond to say anything less than that, but it's interesting. I do wonder if maybe he should stop doing it during the finals. Steve Kerr said it doesn't bother him. I'm going to keep doing this podcast during the NBA Finals, but that's different. I'm not playing in these NBA Finals. That would be I could not get a shot off, even though I'm a okay pickup basketball player in the dad ball circuit. I think I would struggle to play in these NBA Finals, but I'm not playing in these NBA Finals. I can keep doing my podcast without anybody asking questions. People are asking whether Draymond should be doing it. Maybe that's legit. Maybe it's a distraction. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's only a storyline because the Warriors are now in a 2-1 hole. We'll pick that one up a little bit more as the series goes along. I believe Game 4 Friday in Boston. Let's finish with the cooler. Cooper Kupp, Rams receiver, the very good Rams receiver, gets a 3-year extension, adds about $80 million to his deal over those 3 years. So now he's got about 5 years and $110 million because he had the 2 years left at about 15 on his previous contract. So good for him. The Rams paying Cooper Kupp and Aaron Donald. Interesting to note the context as we think about Justin Jefferson. If Justin Jefferson has the kind of year we think he will have, and there's not any reason to think he won't because he's been great his first 2 years, and now he has Kevin O'Connell, former Rams offensive coordinator, who was there when Cooper Kupp has been thriving in L.A., as his head coach now in Minnesota, could get even more opportunities, more mismatches here in Minnesota. What kind of contract will he be due for after this 2022 season is over and they can get into the offseason next year and be able to extend him and keep him happy. So these numbers for wide receivers keep going up and up. Cooper Kupp getting paid in that stratosphere. Justin Jefferson going to deserve that as well. Going to be hard to pay some other people, though, when a wide receiver is making that much. So pay attention to that next offseason when Justin Jefferson is due for a big raise. That'll do it for today. Thanks for joining me here on Daily Delivery. We'll be back at it again on Friday.